I'm Tom.
And we are VIMTV Velocities in Music. We are album riddle thing that we do every couple weeks, where Tom puts up a couple album riddles, and the person who can the first person to successfully solve both of the album riddles gets carte blanche choice over what we review. We will review whatever. So the album that Alex, the winner of the last set of album riddles, chose for us is Radiohead's In Rainbows. So, if you know anything about Jake and Tom, we love here at VIMTV our Radiohead. I think I do a little bit more than you, but this is the band that got me into music. I waited for In Rainbows to come out for 4 years, and Tom and I kind of have a hot-cold, me being hot on this album, Tom being kind of a little cold, not super cold, but definitely, I think in comparison to other Radiohead albums, this is not one of your favorites. And so we've been kind of avoiding reviewing this album for as long as we possibly could. We've had people request this, we've blown them off, we wanted to do it in our throwbacks, we've just been avoiding it, but now, just because of the strict rules of winning the album riddle game, we have to do it. So against our will, we're going into this debate, so stick with us, everybody, because we're representing two sides of the story. Alright. I'm just going to get this out of the way, Tom. I think this album is fantastic. It's one of probably, if I were to pick 3 albums I've listened to that I just think are absolutely flawless, this is one of them. And I think it is one of the, it's probably, to me, it's Radiohead's most complete and well-done album. It may not be my favorite Radiohead album, but I still think it's probably their best written. I'm giving this a 100. I know you're probably going to go a little bit lower than that. So now I think we have to identify to you guys why Tom and I disagree a little bit about it. So you want to just take over and say what you think about this album?
Sure. To start, I'm going to quote you quoting me. What I said years ago. Jake, we were talking about this on the phone the other night, and Jake said, when we review this, I'm going to quote you, and I'm just going to take it from you now.
That's fine.
He said, and I don't even remember saying this, but I know that this was my thoughts. Jake said, Tom, when this came out, you said to me once that the album ends after Bodysnatchers, track 2. And I know what I meant by that, and I'm going to explain myself. I love the first 2 tracks on this album, 15 Step and Bodysnatchers. Love, love, love them. And then after that, the album honestly gets kind of boring for me. And it's the kind of thing where I listen to it, and I can actually really appreciate the perfect production, all the little sounds and nuances that make these songs what they are. I can appreciate the brilliant songwriting, the guitar playing, and the melodies that are written that go into them. But the thing is, they just don't grip me like any other Radiohead album does. I feel like, and the thing is, to me, what I identified is that I really like the crazy electronic side of Radiohead, like Kid A. And I really love the rock-out, balls-to-the-wall side of Radiohead, like the Bends. Well, to me, this album feels like Kid A without the weird electronic stuff, or the Bends with the distortion pedal turned off. A lot of clean guitar, none of that spark that really made it interesting for me. It's just very much the bare bones songwriting, with some little extra effects in there, but not prominent enough to really make it engaging for me. Tracks like House of Cards, track 8, which I know is a lot of people's favorites. To me, that song just drags on and on. It's kind of slow, it's kind of boring to me, and I know a lot of people see like that and Reckoner as emotional climaxes to the album, well, before the real one, which is Videotape. But kind of preludes to that. But honestly, those songs, I find it just be kind of boring, while I can listen to it and say, yeah, this is cool, I like what they're doing, but I just don't really care. I don't feel like they make me care. And another thing that blocks it for me is, as we discovered when we were reviewing King of Limbs, my entry point to Radiohead is the instrumentals. It's Ed and Johnny and Colin and Phil and not Tom. To me, Tom York's vocals is really just the icing on top that makes it cool in other ways. But really, I focus on the instrumentals here. And that's actually why albums like this and the other, one of their other big critically acclaimed albums, OK Computer, is actually one of my least favorites, because tracks on there that people really dig, like Let Down and No Surprises, I think are boring because the guitars are just kind of clean and doing what they do.
And they're resting on Tom's voice.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about Tom York's vocals, and his vocals there are kind of drony, and I don't really feel it. So to me, after Bodysnatchers, this is kind of the Tom York being mellow show.
Right.
And so I love, that on Bodysnatchers you have that distortion, you get that energy from his voice.
That's one of Radiohead's best songs.
Yeah. And so really where Tom York's voice gets me is when he's putting that energy into it, which is also why I like Jigsaw falling into place.
Right, when Tom's having fun with it.
Exactly.
So to me, and Tom and I, you got to keep in mind, this is a debate that's been going on for 4 years now. and we've learned that we each listen to Radiohead very differently. I mean, this was a band that really got us both into music in a different way. I know, it definitely catapulted in our music listening into a different direction. And what I've learned in my research of Radiohead and just being obsessed for the past decade with this band is that this is In Rainbows is a Radiohead album, unlike any Radiohead album before it, and probably any Radiohead album after it. The band, after Hail to the Thief, coming off their record deal with Capitol Records, they almost broke up, but here they're coming back together. They released this album at a pay your price that you choose. This is a reinvention of Radiohead's sound. Again, they're a band famous for doing this, and how they chose to reinvent their sound on this album is by scaling back the instrumentals, by reducing them and simplifying them to such a exact finite point that the focus is then on Tom York's vocals and one other factor, which is the lyrics. And I think that lyrically, speaking about all of Radiohead's collective work, In Rainbows is unlike any other Radiohead album in that the lyrics matter. If you're going to fully understand this album and fully appreciate it, you have to dissect the lyrics, absorb them, tear them apart, figure out what the theme of this album is, and how all the lyrics work together. Because one thing that's great about this album is the lyrics work with the songwriting, especially on the more atmospheric tracks where you have lots of atmospheric guitars in the background and different sound effects that they're playing in. Tracks, specifically speaking, House of Cards, where, blame it on your house of cards and I'll do mine in the chorus, and then you have all these swirling, atmospheric guitars and sound effects going on, and what it does is it creates this staggered intensity to where here he'll sing this song, he's singing it, it's kind of just this happy yet bittersweet melancholic key, and then all of a sudden here comes this storm of emotion, and then it switches. That change in intensity is present and presented to the listener in different ways throughout the album, and I see tracks like 15 Step, Bodysnatchers, and Jigsaw as some of the more boring tracks on this album, just from the standpoint that what they're doing is they're holding down the album. They're holding down this emotional release. I think lyrically, the theme on this album is infidelity in a relationship, and I think that's presented fairly well lyrically throughout the album, specifically starting with Nude and then going on. And I think that you're hearing Tom York emote and sing vocally like he's never sung before. He uses a wider range of his voice. He doesn't rock out quite as hard, something that I know Tom, and people who enjoy the more, just instrumentally driven Radiohead, it's something that's not present as much here, but what you have in its place is if you can get into Tom York's voice and get that emotional appeal from his voice, this album is absolutely genius. And I think that this is just one. I have went out and searched via MTV and just reviewing almost 400 albums. I have yet to find something that's truly this genius in its production. Even I know I love Fleet Fox's Helplessness Blues. I think it takes an album of that caliber to compete with this, just because so much thought and planning went into this. They slaved over this. They took stuff out. They stripped this. You can hear some of these tracks are from like the OK Computer sessions, and you'll Nude. You'll hear a completely different version of Nude if you watch Meeting People Is Easy, the Radiohead video that came out in 1998 after the tour for OK Computer. You'll see a completely different version of this, an early version, and it's a wholly different song with the same lyrics, but the vocals are sung differently, the guitars are approached differently, and here what they did is they reduced it to something that's pure emotion and delivery. That's what it's all about, and to evoke emotion. So if you're not getting that emotional vibe, like my fellow compatriot here, this album, you're going to miss out on some of the finer points that you really have to have an emotional appeal to get. And
Yeah.
it just comes down to
Exactly.
you
Do
feel
you
it
get
or
that
not.
or not? Because for me, and I think that's another reason why I tend to like the instrumental post rock
Yeah.
genres a lot more than you, because that's my emotional entry point to music. Post rock can make me feel without needing vocals. Well, here it's all about the vocals
Right.
making you feel, and if you don't get that, you're not going to get it, and that's fine,
it's
and that's
true.
where I'm at.
Yep. And I think it just comes down to what you like in music. And really, that's the beautiful part about this album. Is
Yeah.
Radiohead created this situation, this scenario, to where it makes you think about this kind of shit. That is, the fact that a band can do that using, what is this, 44 minutes, 45 minutes
Yeah,
long?
something like that.
Recording. That's astounding to me, and this is just the prime example of why Radiohead is my favorite band. So I'm giving this a 100. I think I've said enough of
Yeah.
what I want to say about it.
I'm going to give it an 84. I really like this album. I think it's better than most music out there, but just as a huge Radiohead fan, I actually think it's a weaker Radiohead album.
Yeah, and unfortunately for you, Tom, I think that
I know I'm
this
in the
is-
minority.
Well, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But you do represent a lot of people's thoughts about Radiohead in general, who maybe aren't as big of fans as we are. But the other thing is that in going forward, without a record company, bitching at Radiohead, telling them how to do it, I think that you're going to see more of this. Because even on The King of Limbs, you're seeing Tom still have a very active role, a lot of weight on his vocals. So that's probably a trend we're going to see going forward. But I don't think to the mastery that this album is. And Tom, not being able to connect with it or not connecting with it as much as, me, obviously, and still giving an 84. I mean, I think that just shows how
It's
incredibly
good.
well written and polished this thing is. So I'm really interested to see what I know to both of us are just would be thrilled to see what you guys think of this album and who you side more with. I know we expect that most of the Radiohead fans out there are going to side with me, but if you don't, please say something, because there's a lot of good opinions out there about Radiohead and Radiohead's music and this album in particular, because this was a very unique experience, especially the pay your own price thing. So leave us a comment at www.velocitiesinmusic.com or youtube.com/velocitiesinmusic. Thanks, Alex, for the request and for participating in our album riddle game. We appreciate that. You guys can all participate. Just follow us on Twitter and Facebook, because every 2 weeks we post a couple riddles, and the first person to get it, you get whatever you want. That's what we do, and even when we don't want to, we'll review it. So follow us on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
And that's us. We're Velocities in Music. Moving music critique forward.